Hello again. Every time I make the mistake of putting my phone on video and then it starts counting down like get ready and I'm over here like hold on, I'm not ready. Okay, anyways. Moving on. I had this other thought that is it's kind of a conundrum in my mind and it's used both sides. And it made me think of Alice in Wonderland because the other message that came through was about doors. And then all I could hear is one side makes you smaller, the other makes you taller. Which, if I put that into light, one side will make you brighter and lighter, and the other side will make you heavy, dark, and dull. But it's still this trying to piece together, use both sides. And I heard somebody say this, but this was after I picked up my honey, but I needed to take the cap off to take the seal so I could use the honey. And I went to use my hand, which I've always been right hand dominant, and I can't use that hand to open anymore. I have to use it to hold and then use the left to open because it's stronger. Why is it stronger? Because it's been neglected. I'm sorry, I still love you. But it's still the fact that I've always used that more dominant side, and we do that with our brains as well. But if we learn from dolphins, they'll always have one side awake, so they're conscious of predators around them in the ocean. One side of their brain is what I'm talking about, and then they'll turn the other side on to shut off the other side, so they don't really ever sleep. They just go into like a resting phase on one portion of their mind. But that's when we put that into a human aspect, that's the creative side. You have, I want to say it's the left lobe. I don't know. I don't remember anatomy and physiology anymore. But there's one side that is creative. There's one side that's for your imagination and artistic abilities and the things that aren't necessarily admired in society. But then the other side of our brain is that theoretical side that says, if I use this side, then I can make this work. This will be the gain. This is going to be my outcome. So when it comes down to using both sides, I am only applying this to my brain, that you have to creatively consider a problem. And I used the word conundrum earlier for a reason. Now that that's coming out, it's one of those issues that it's almost like a cycle of problems that you can't quite resolve. And it's just like earlier when I was like the doors and the inheritance and the speak the truth and use both sides. And it's this puzzle of putting it together. And I have to wonder how many other people are being attacked by their own brain. Are you using both sides? Is your dominant side now your weaker side? And your weaker side has to be empowered to grow to help you utilize that side that you've been lacking in. Because even my son and I were talking the other day about how much percentage of the human brain that is actually assessed, accessed, and used. And I had to tell him, but that's only within certain minds. Like, there's other minds. If you were to look into Einstein's mind or Tesla or Aristotle's or, philosophers and creators and builders, they're using different aspects of their brain. Now, in the regular human brain, we have these crevices that create gray matter, and that's where it's the dead zone, basically. So you have all these currents that actually wiggle around across the surface. It's never diving deep. So that made me have to question, the deeper you dive, do you actually open up these areas? And it's just like the Marianas Trench. It's so far down that people assumed at one point there's no life down there. But that's actually where the generation of the life is occurring. It's these little minuscule particles that you can't even see that are in the depths of the deepest, coldest areas that we can't touch. We can maybe explore for a second, but on a pressure concept, you can't stay down there. You can evaluate, and that's almost like the using both sides. That you have to be able to dig deep. But I understand, the same with me. It is a very uncomfortable situation, because when you dive deep, that means you're deep into your emotions, your vault of trauma and pain and things that you've hidden from the world, that you've hidden so well, you've hidden from yourself. And it's very hard to say, okay, I'm gonna find the courage to go and dig into this. Because honestly, that's the only way you can unpack the bag. That way you get rid of the baggage and you're no longer carrying something around that's holding you back. So it still comes down to use both sides. And now the heart has to come into the matter, because your heart and your mind, flip it, switch it, reverse it, you get it, they function both on their own. Like, you don't tell your heart to beat. You don't tell your mind to think. Actually, it's the opposite. These are the things that are the driving force for you as an individual, your body, the way that you're going to function. So when we sit there, and same with me, I get caught up here because, as one, I'm an Aquarian, and we are heavy thinkers and forethinkers. Like, we see things that are hundreds of years in advance, and it's like, oh, that person's crazy. Hi, I'm crazy. But anyways, when you have to use two sources that you don't control, you have to start asking yourself, what's the purpose and understanding? One side makes you taller and the other side makes you smaller. And the concept in that for me is that when you use your heart, the world sees you as that gullible, naive, caring, loving person, and they don't realize that's actually the bigger person. I've had to tell myself, as well as my kids, be the bigger person. Maybe you have to be the one that walks away. Maybe you have to be the one that forgives. Maybe you have to be the one to take the first step. And that a lot of times was coming from here, the smaller part. And a lot of times when I took my own advice, it put me back into a karmic wheel, a toxic cycle of allowing people that I had already known should not be in my environment. That I already knew what their motive was, but then the other side wants to say, well, people change. People can grow. Give them a chance. But I had to remind myself earlier that you can stand around waiting your entire life for someone to change, something to change, and that will keep you yourself from changing. And it's not to say shut yourself off emotionally, close off your heart, because believe me, I've tried those aspects of life as well. As much as there's that solace in the environment, it becomes isolation, and then the world still continues on around you. So it's really hard whenever you want to figure out a problem for yourself. And it's one thing I always have to remind myself, you got to always look back up. You've always got to give that praise again and say, I know I'm not alone. I know that you're here for me. I know that I'm being guided. I know that what my brain is telling me is a thought that's coming in for a reason, because it's meant to almost be those AED paddles, the now you're back to life. And it's got a purpose of helping you to kind of bring that spirit back into you. And I know it's hard because we live in a world that really doesn't function on a spiritual concept. You know, it functions more on a mental, I've said it multiple times, competitive, greedy, looking for gain. If you can't give me something, I don't want anything out of it. And it's when you're trying to figure out everyone else out, when you're trying to keep a game going, when you always want to be the one in the winning spot, you're going to tend to lose the concept of yourself. And you get lost in the world around you. And then, in a sense, that's going to bring those doors back to in your face. And the whole time, What did Alice figure out? It wasn't the cookies or the potion, it was the key. And the funny thing is, every time she had the key, she wasn't the appropriate size to use the key. But she tried to figure it out here. And then the emotions came from here. And then it was, okay, now I'll use these tools I have, but now I'm too small and I've created my own ocean. And now I've got to dive into this world that is out of this world and understand that this isn't what I thought it was. And my daughter even said yesterday, it feels like we're in hell. When do I get out of hell? When do we get out of hell? And I said, it's funny because I've thought that a long time. I used to ask myself, when is enough enough? And then I had to tell myself, well, enough is enough when you say it's enough. I did that. I walked a path with spirit and things started flowing. And then it was like I was thrown back into the world. And it was looking around going, well, darn it, they're all wolves again. But I don't know how to navigate these seas. I can't shut one side on and one side off, and I'm exhausted. I don't know how to make it make sense. And still, there's this aspect of you have to use both sides. And believe me, I'm still trying to piece the puzzle together. If you have anything that adds to that notion, hey, my thunker's open. I'm willing to listen, because it always takes a tribe. I used to say it takes a tribe to raise a village, a tribe to raise a child. Got to work together. And for some reason, everybody's working apart. There's a personal gain they're looking for rather than this unity. And it's almost like we might see the ants moving along carrying a heavy load, but we forget that they're taking them back to their whole entire community and that they're working together. All for one little queen. Either way, she's the one that gave them life, and they know protect that which breathes life into you. So, more chaos in the brain. Hopefully that helps somebody, because it's still got me going. One side makes you taller, the other makes you smaller. Curiouser and curiouser it becomes. Peace, love, and light.